Hi everyone, how's everyone doing here today? It's pretty chilly out and I don't know, I guess the weather's kind of impacting my mood a little bit because, I'm not my usual outgoing self. There's a lot that's been going on, and the one thing I wanted to talk about briefly was the recent shooting that occurred where Brian Thompson, the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, as you all know by now, he was fatally shot, and the assassin is still at large, hasn't been identified yet, let alone caught. So it brings more light to the problem of healthcare in America in general. Now, as far as the incident itself, I have mixed feelings about that. I know there are people on Twitter, from what I've heard, that have been, mocking this person, Brian Thompson, because, he was considerably wealthy. He had a net worth at approximately $43 million. This is information I just did a general request on ChatGPT, so some of the numbers, some of the details might be off. If they are, pardon me for that. Feel free to correct me. And there's been some shady things with healthcare in general, like denying coverage, issues with pre-existing conditions. This is just throughout all of healthcare in the U.S., not just UnitedHealthcare. And it's a problem we still continue to struggle with for years. Now, however you feel about this shooting, that's up to you. I'm not here to talk to people about that. No one's going to change their feelings based on what I say. Overall, I do not approve of political violence. This doesn't solve any problems. I've always been vocal about that, so let me just at least put that out there for the record. Yes, that even includes the assassination attempt on Trump. I don't encourage violence of any kind, regardless of who's doing it to who. But on the flip side, this also, like I said, this hopefully puts this issue into perspective. And I know some people are going to make jokes like, oh, stop whining, stop this and that, you're being a liberal snowflake and all that. No, I'm being somebody who's concerned about a serious problem. And for the record, I lean more progressive. I've always been supportive of Bernie Sanders. He may not be perfect, but when it comes to healthcare, he's usually been pretty consistent about Medicare for all, and that's always been met with scrutiny. So it's about time we revisit the problem because it's a serious problem at hand. Okay, one of the things I also did look up is that within the first quarter of 2024, there is approximately 27.1 million people who do not have health care at all. And if you do the math, that's approximately 8.2% of the population. Again, like before, I know ChatGPT is not always the most reliable, so some of those numbers might be a little off. And again, feel free to correct me. But that's still a lot of people. 8.2%, give or take, of the nationwide population. That's still a lot of people that don't have health care. So if something happens to them, if they're in an accident or they get into a serious illness, depending on their age, they could fall into medical debt. And from what I also hear, that medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcies among the working class. So how do we deal with this problem? Now, I would like it to see that we come up with a healthcare plan. Yes, even if it's funded by the government, even if it makes healthcare free, to make sure every single American is taken care of, especially people with families, people with children. I would think that regardless who you voted for in the last election, you'd agree with me on that. I think it's safe to say you'd agree with me on that, especially if you don't have health care. And this problem tends to impact more people in red states than blue states. And again, that's not making it seem like, well, blue states are better than red states, or the people in blue states are better than the people in red states. No. In the end, we're all Americans. Now, if you voted for Trump, that's fine. I'm past the election. That's not what this is about. This is about here and now and moving forward. I know he hasn't been sworn in yet. But my question is, what is Donald Trump, who will be the next president, going to do as far as fixing this problem? Because it's not going to go away, and this assassination attempt even if it does bring some light to it, are the politicians going to be more responsible, not simply just for their safety, but for the sake of preserving the lives of Americans, regardless of what state you live in, regardless if they voted for you or not? That's the question I have, okay? So if you're a Trump supporter and you're watching this, my first question would be, what is Trump's plan to help resolve this issue? Does he have a plan? It's a fair question, okay? Again, I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying, what's he going to do about it? And it's also something to keep in mind that, as you know, back in 2016, he came out with it's the first thing he's going to do on day one, and it didn't happen. And, same was, nobody knew healthcare would be so complicated. Like, no, Don, we knew. You're the only one who seemed to didn't know that, okay? Again, that is a fair thing to look at and criticize, okay? If you were in my shoes, what would you think? If you were somebody who didn't have healthcare and you voted for Donald Trump, what are you thinking then, okay? I really want to know. I'm trying to be constructive here. I'm not trying to make this... Because the problem wasn't caused by Trump. Let's be real about that. He's not the source of the problem. He's just a symptom of capitalism, whereby insurance companies and healthcare and pharmaceutical companies reach a point that, because of capitalism, it's profits over people. Now, I'm all for a company, whether it's insurance or pharmaceuticals, have to make a certain amount of profit to sustain themselves and produce the product they need to help Americans. That part I get. But do CEOs need an overly inflated income? No, I don't think so. Do they need bonuses? No. I think there should be a salary cap. I think there should be a wealth cap. But something else that the GOP has been talking about, okay, again, I'm going by what they've said, is that Trump wants to do more tax cuts for the wealthy, which is obviously not going to solve the problem, because then I believe it was Mike Johnson who said they want to make cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. How is that going to help people? How is that going to solve the problem? Okay? I'm really asking you to do some soul searching, and it goes back to my final question. And also, Mike Johnson, he kind of said the same thing that Mike Pence did in about, I think it was 2016 or 17, where he's like, when Trump's healthcare plan got shut down, John McCain was the one who put the final nail in the coffin. If you're going to blame McCain, don't, because I don't think he did that in bad faith. I think he did that because he felt that this plan wasn't good enough and wasn't going to work. And it turns out it supposedly had tax cuts for the wealthy, which they got anyway. And there was never a healthcare plan. And then Mike Pence said, we'll just repeal the Affordable Care Act and replace it at a later time. What do you mean replace it at a later time? Pardon the background noise. If you repeal the Affordable Care Act, a lot of people are going to lose their health care coverage. So what are they supposed to do in the meantime while you maybe and hopefully eventually come up with a replacement plan that's better? Now, Mike Johnson is saying the same thing. We're going to repeal the Affordable Care Act. A lot of people don't realize, still, to my surprise, that Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act are one and the same. But because it's got Obama's name on it, it's like, come on. The Affordable Care Act has done a lot of good. Is it perfect? No. Can Congress come up with a better plan? Sure, then do that. If you want to repeal it, fine, but make sure you have a contingency plan, a backup to replace it with, so people don't lose their health care. This way, if something happens to them, they won't fall into medical debt. Put out a plan that will help insure, like I said, some of the Americans that don't have health insurance at all, or have bad health insurance, but that don't have to worry about co-pays, that don't have to worry about being rejected because of pre-existing conditions. That all Americans, regardless of the state they live in, regardless of who they voted for in the last election, get the health care that they need. That's what I want. Now, some of you are going to turn around, or politicians are going to turn around and say, we can't do that. That's socialism. How so? If you got good health care through your job, fine. But if you don't, if you get fired or laid off for whatever reason, and then you lose your health care, you need something to fall back on. And I don't care who solves it. I don't care if it's Donald Trump that solves it. If he comes out with something and he calls it Trump Care, okay, fine. Call it Trump Care. If it actually works, if it actually brings down that number, if it brings down mortality rates, if it helps lower the cost of certain pharmaceuticals that are pretty costly, but essential and life-saving, I'll give credit where credit's due. I really will. I may not like the guy, I may not warm up to the guy, but I'll at least look at it and say, hey, you know what? He came out with Trump Care and it has actually worked, so I'll give him a thumbs up on that. But all I'm hearing about so far, and to be fair, he hasn't been sworn in yet, so I'm just kind of waiting and seeing. All I hear is about tax cuts for the wealthy. And Mike Johnson says, well, we're going to do away with the Affordable Care Act, with no mention of a contingency or a backup. So, to be fair, what am I supposed to think? How am I supposed to feel about that? I'm okay, but there are a lot of Americans that are not. And the content I create and the thoughts that I have aren't just, well, what's it going to do for me? No, what's it going to do for America? So my question for now is, what can we do as voters to try and help remedy this? Even though we're not lawmakers, I get it, but if anybody has any suggestions, even if you're a Trump supporter, if you have an idea, I would really love to hear about it. Like, you might say something which I've already thought about, is reaching out to some of our local representatives and encourage them that in the light of this incident, as tragic as it may be, what can we do to help improve healthcare for all Americans? And see what they say. Is there any possible plan? Ask them questions. I've done this in the past under the Biden administration, where I've actually gone to, I think it's whitehouse.gov or .org, and submitted questions or made suggestions or expressed my concerns about certain problems. This is a concern for me. Because I also have friends and family who don't have the best of health care, or if cuts are made to Medicare or Medicaid, they can be negatively impacted. And it shouldn't be like that. I'm all for a wealth tax. Elon Musk put out a post how we should be feeling sorry for Brian Thompson and the importance of CEOs. The hell with him, because he doesn't care about Americans. He doesn't care about the working class. Let's be real here. Let's honestly be real here, okay? Again, I'm not turning this into a bash of politician. I'm just talking about a problem and trying to think of ways that voters can work together to help resolve. If you know of anything else, petitions or certain organizations that are helping to push, better health care to get all Americans taken care of, then I would really love to hear about it. Okay? I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. Again, I don't care who you voted for in the last election. I'm past that. I don't care what your beliefs are. But if you have an idea, if you have a solution, that's something I can look into and that others can look into, I would sincerely love to hear about it. And, like I said, I hope in the next administration things do get better. Okay? It's not about opposition. It's about doing the right thing, and most importantly, politicians doing their job. We can make the argument that Biden could have done more. That would be a fair thing to say or think. But we're past that now, okay? Biden's going to be gone soon. Now Trump's going to be in. So what can we do from here to get him to do the right thing for all Americans? Not just not just blue states, not just red states, not just people that voted for Trump, but for all Americans. I really would love to hear ideas. So. Let me know your thoughts, please. I would definitely love to hear from them. If you're just going to make some obnoxious remark, if you're just going to be like, Trump 2024, I'm not going to respond to that. If you're just going to say, well, Trump's going to make America great again, okay, but that's not really a suggestion or an idea. It's like just some slogan. It means specifically, what is the plan? If you know of a plan that he's put out there, I would love to hear about it. If you got a link to an article, I would definitely look into it. But again, I'm looking for ideas. I really am, and I really hope some of you can get back to me with them. If you can't, you can't. If you don't know, that's fine. But if you do have some suggestions, feel free to leave a comment. And thank you for watching. I really hope you understand.